Hi, I'm Jennifer De Benedictis. I'm one of the lab instructors for Apsc 1299, and this video is to give you a little bit of information about how the labs work. So first of all, there's a kit that you're going to sign out from the library. In fact, you should sign it out before the first lab period and bring it with you. But the kit contains most of the equipment that you're going to need for this semester. So you sign it out at the beginning of the semester and give it back at the end of the semester, or if you drop the course. You will also be given some components in the first lab period, so things like wires and LEDs and resistors. The labs are worth 25% of the course grade, and the final project is worth 30% of the course grade. So most of your grade comes from work that you do in the labs, so just be ready for that. We do work you hard in the labs because it's a big chunk of your grade. You are going to be given most of the week to complete each experiment. So, for example, you start the first lab in the first lab period, but it's not actually due at the end of the 3-hour lab period. It's due in the second week. So you're given several days more to complete the experiment on your own at home. And then you hand in your work electronically on the Moodle page. Generally speaking, you do need that much time. The labs aren't really designed to be completed in 3 hours. So do plan to come to the lab period every week and work for the full 3 hours, but then you do get several days more to work on it on your own. Your lab instructor will give you your exact deadline. One thing we will have you do, however, is have your logbook signed by your lab instructor before you leave the lab room each week. And that's just so that we can keep track of how much you did in the lab period versus how much you did on your own at home. So do get your book signed before you leave each week. Now, it's a good idea to start early on finishing your labs. So work during the lab period, but also get an early start on finishing it on your own time. And that's for 2 reasons. First of all, if you try and finish it the night before it's due, you might run out of time. But also, if you have an equipment issue, like you discover something's not working, you don't get an extension for that. Part of the reason why we give you more days to finish the lab on your own is so that if you do wind up with an equipment issue, you can get in touch with your lab instructor or the lab technician, get that piece of equipment replaced, and still complete your lab on time. So start early, just because if you've got an equipment issue, you're expected to fix it and still finish on time. Now, as I mentioned, you're going to be handing in your work electronically, and there's a separate video explaining how you do that. The grading in this course might, however, be a little different than what you're expecting. You will be given a grade out of 10 for each lab, but 5 of your marks come from being done on time, and the other 5 come from the quality of your note-taking. I'll explain what I mean about both of those things more in just a moment. But what I want to stress here is that we do not grade you on correctness. In other words, if you make a mistake, your lab instructor will point that out to you, but you don't lose any marks for that. Our rationale for this is that we're really just here to facilitate your education. You're the one actually learning things. So the stuff you learn in the labs is what you need to know to do the final project and your lab exam. So it really is your responsibility, if you don't quite understand something, to get it figured out. We'll help you with that. But you're the person who needs to recognize when you don't quite understand something yet, and then fix that gap in your understanding by either working on it more or asking questions of us. As I said, you're going to get 5 marks for being done on time, for completeness. So what that means is, if your lab's not completely done and handed in by the deadline, you're going to lose up to 5 marks based on how much you were not able to complete. Now, obviously, if there's some extenuating circumstances, like you were sick or you had a family emergency, we can make exceptions for that, but we need to know that something happened. So if you're dealing with something and you know you're not going to be able to get your lab handed in on time, get a message to your lab instructor as soon as you can. We can be lenient about the deadline if we know that you're struggling with something. So if you are, just make sure you communicate with us, and we'll work something out. Now, the other half of your grade is going to come from your note-taking, and there's a separate video covering how you do that. So watch that carefully, because that's the other half of your grade. Basically, what you're going to be doing is taking a really good technical diary of what you did in the lab as you were doing it. So that means as you're working on stuff, moment by moment, you would jot down notes about what you're doing and what you saw happen, including things that didn't work out right on the first try. So again, think of it as a technical diary that you take moment by moment as you go along. So do watch that video on how to take notes in your logbook carefully. It's one of the more important skills that we teach you in this course. So it's very normal in this course that you would collaborate with other students and talk about your code. That's okay, and it's encouraged. However, we also want to let you know what we consider to be over the line in terms of working with other students, and that's basically copying anything. So everybody in the class needs to write their own individual code and get it working on their own machine. And you cannot hand in the same code as somebody else. So basically the rule is never give a copy of your code to anybody else. That all by itself we consider to be academic dishonesty, even if they don't use it. So never give a copy of your code to anybody. It's okay to point to your screen. It's okay to write down pseudocode and share it with them, or to talk about what you did in your code with other people. That's all encouraged. That's all a good thing to do. But everybody needs to write their own code and get it working themselves. If you turn in the same code as somebody else, we consider that plagiarism, and we do have a policy of writing up all of those cases to the dean's office. So just be aware of that. You are welcome to talk to other students about what you did, but keep a really tight hold on your own work. Now, on the Moodle website, you're going to see a bunch of pieces of code. So these are little tiny bits of code that just get you started on a particular experiment. You'll also find for a lot of labs that there are short little videos you can watch about how to do one particular skill. I consider those to be a good idea for you to watch, but it's basically optional. So if you think you would benefit, go ahead when it comes to those shorter videos. Another thing to be aware of is that there is a lot of technical stuff in this course that you're expected to get a handle on, so it's very normal to need to ask a lot of questions. Especially at the beginning of the semester, it can be a little overwhelming, so do ask your lab instructor lots of questions. That's totally normal and okay, and we are expecting it. So don't be shy about that. You can talk to us in the lab periods, of course. You are also welcome to email us questions outside of the labs. If you do need to email a question, however, try to include lots of technical information for your lab instructor. So, for example, send them a screenshot of the error messages you're seeing, or paste in a code snippet that you're having trouble with, or send a photo of the circuit that you built, stuff like that. So just make sure your lab instructor has lots of technical information if you're asking a question by email. And so finally, I'll just wish you good luck with the labs this semester. This can be a challenging course, but it's also really cool. You build stuff and it actually works and does stuff. It's quite satisfying. So I hope you have a really good experience with this course this semester. Good luck with your labs.